too pure for this wicked world. Your data's uncorrupted, but does something skip inside you? That's what takes up time.
Hi there, welcome back to My Hot Kitchen. I'm Wendy and I'm showing you how to cook up another easy romantic meal that you can make for a nice date night at home. Tonight's meal is going to kick off with some easy finger food, some stuffed mushrooms, and the main course will feature stuffed chicken, pesto risotto, and delicious pesto biscuits to go along with it. So the very first thing that you're going to want to do is get your mushrooms ready for stuffing. So I have about 8 nice big cremini mushrooms here. And I'm going to begin by pulling out the stems and scooping out the gills. I'm going to be using a spoon to scoop out the gills. And what I'm going to do is just gently work it in there and using a soft scraping motion, I'm going to scrape those little gills out of there. There we go. The first one's out. What you want to do is make sure that you get most of the gills out of there, but that you don't damage the outside of the mushroom. So use a soft touch. And you can always use the gills and the stems to stick in a stock or a sauce a little bit later on if you want. Sometimes I'll stick these things in the freezer for a couple weeks until I'm ready to make a soup. Alrighty. Now I'm just going to clean up my workspace here a little bit. And then I'm going to love up the mushrooms. I'm going to be turning over each of the caps and dousing them with a little bit of olive oil and a little salt and pepper so that they're extra special tasty when they're all broiled together. I find that food always tastes better when you layer in the flavors. And a little salt and pepper and olive oil goes a long way towards making that happen. Kind of rub that in a little bit and turn them back over. All right, set them over here to the side while I prepare my stuffing. So all I'm going to do is mix together some bay shrimp, about 1.5 ounces of grated sharp cheddar cheese, a couple tablespoons of minced onion, and a nice big hearty scoop of breadcrumbs. The breadcrumbs play an important role in the stuffing because as the mushrooms cook, they release water. And nobody wants a watery stuffed mushroom. The breadcrumbs help to absorb that water. Once it's all combined, I'm just going to go ahead and pile it into my little mushroom caps here. Making sure to fill each one as full as I possibly can. Nice heaping piles in each one. And then once I've got them all filled, I'm going to put them on a foil-covered baking sheet, get them ready to go in the broiler. Man, I'm getting hungry making these. See, I still have a little stuffing left over, so I'm going to make sure that gets on top of the mushrooms here. Nice big piles. And the final touch is a little bit more salt and pepper on top of this, just for that extra little pop. Be great little finger foods for you and your sweetie to share. And these are ready to go in the broiler. I'm starting with a cold broiler here, so these are probably going to take about 15 minutes to finish off. Alrighty. Now it's time to make some pesto. So I'm going to need the salt and the pepper and the olive oil, which is very important in a good pesto. And I'm going to break out the power tools this time. I'm going to drop a couple cloves of garlic into the blender, a small handful of cashews, and then I'm going to put enough olive oil in there to sort of cover it. And then I'm going to add a nice generous amount of salt to this because the salt's going to help the cashews to start breaking down. A couple grates of pepper. Then I'm going to pulse it and start the pureeing of the nuts. All right, once they've broken down a little bit, I'm going to start adding the basil. Got a couple nice big handfuls of fresh green basil here. And if you're going to be hand making a pesto, now you want to make sure that you choose the basil leaves that are fully green. You don't want to see any brown spots in there. That means that it's not going to taste very good. And it's going to be enough to just about fill the blender here. A couple squeezes of lemon juice. This is going to help to make sure that the basil stays nice and bright and green all through the process. The acidity from the lemon juice will help to protect the color. And then blend it, pulsing gently at first. Once you've pulsed it a few times, you may need to reach in there with a spatula and sort of smash the stuff down into the blades a little bit. And resume blending. Add olive oil as needed to ensure a nice consistency. The olive oil is the vessel in which the basil will blend into and become a beautiful sauce. You can smell the aromatic basil blending with the garlic in here. It's amazing. Well, that looks like a pretty good consistency to me. Now the last thing to add is some very finely grated aged hard cheese. I'm using an aged Gouda cheese tonight. Traditionally the recipe calls for Parmesan. Just pulse that in there. And then give it a little taste and see what you made here. You should be able to taste the basil and the garlic and the cashews all blended together, and it should taste really strong and really good. I'm going to say this is done. I'm going to put it in a nice little bowl here and keep it for the rest of the meal. That's amazing. Ooh, I'm so excited. The appetizers are ready. Yay. Those look good. Nice crispy little brown tops on them. Put these on a couple nice little plates so me and my sweetie can enjoy them. Oh, they smell really good too. I'm gonna go find my sweetie and share my cute little appetizers with him. That was delicious. What a great way to kick off a nice, easy, romantic meal. So now I'm rolling into making the biscuits, and I've got a little butter in my pan here, and I'm gonna place it in the oven. And I'm gonna let that butter melt because it's gonna make the biscuits taste really flaky and yummy and make sure that the crust gets nice and brown. Now for the biscuits, what you're gonna need is 2 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. What you're gonna wanna do is whisk those ingredients together and make sure they're all combined and that most of the lumps have been worked out of the flour. Once you've done that, take a whole stick of frozen butter and grate it right into the flour. One of the tricks of a good biscuit is even distribution of the butter. And the other trick to a good biscuit is that you want the butter to stay in small little clumps so that the biscuits get fluffy and they build a nice height. When the butter bakes, the water evaporates out of it and causes the biscuit to fluff up. So the more little pockets of butter that you have woven into the biscuit, the better quality it's going to be. Biscuits are a nice and easy little quick bread that's very versatile and takes well to lots of flavors. You can make them sweet, you can make them savory. In this case, we're going to make them pesto-y. With all the butter grated into the flour, I'm just going to scrape out what I can here off of my grater. And then using my trusty fingers, I'm going to blend the butter and the flour together. And blend it until the butter is evenly distributed through the mixture. Once I've got the butter all distributed in there, I'm going to further mix it a little bit by squeezing it. This is going to make sure that butter works its way into the flour and does the job of shortening the dough. Once I have a nice chunky mixture like that, I'm just going to clean off my hands here real quick. And I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of milk that I've treated with lemon juice so that it's more like buttermilk. Pour it in slowly and blend gently. I'm just going to fold it together until the dough becomes nice and moist and starts holding together like it should. You want to be careful not to overmix your dough or overhandle it because that starts to make your biscuits tough, not tender and flaky. That's holding together nicely now. So now I'm going to clear off a little workspace here. And then I'm going to sprinkle out some flour and pat the dough out a little bit. So I've got a little flour on reserve right here. I'm just going to put it over my counter. Quite a bit because the dough's still kind of sticky. I'm just going to scoop all this good stuff out of here, right onto the flour. Get whatever excess is left on the spoon. I'm going to begin kind of molding it together. Now, kneading is not really the right motion to use with a biscuit. It's more like pressing and molding. So I'm going to form it into a little ball, and then I'm going to pat it out on the counter here. I'm going to try to pat it into a nice rectangular shape. Then I'm going to use my rolling pin to flatten it out and even it out even more and square it off a little bit more. And then in comes the pesto. Just going to give it a little mix here. Put a nice little scoop out on it. Spread it out. Oh, that smells so good. Wow. Look at how pretty that bright green color is. Make sure the layer is nice and even. And then fold dough over on itself. Work with your fingers to square it off even more. And then cut a couple biscuits out of that. All right, now you're going to need to go grab the pan out of the oven. I can hear the butter sizzling from here. Perfect, just melted. You don't really want to see it browning, you just want to see it melted and just barely starting to cook. So take each of your biscuits and flip them over so that each side is coated with butter. Hey, I never said the biscuits were healthy. I only said they're good and they take on flavors really well. Once you've coated each of the biscuits, give them a little space so they can fluff up. And then put these bad boys back in the oven. Need a nice high temperature. I've got my oven set at 425 degrees. And I'm thinking it's going to take about 15 minutes for these to bake off. So it's been about 15 minutes and I can smell my biscuits. They smell so good. They have to be done now. Oh, those look great. Nice and golden brown on top. A little green pesto peeking through. That's gorgeous. So now I'm gonna get these guys out of the pan and into little bread baskets so they can start cooling off so we can enjoy them with our dinner. Mmm, so tasty. And then I'm gonna come over here and start working on the chicken. So tonight's stuffed chicken will be pounded out chicken. So you wanna start with a couple sheets of plastic wrap or some sort of similar substance. Give yourself some space. And something nice and heavy. A meat mallet or a good heavy rolling pin will do the trick. And just start pounding the schnot out of the poor little chicken breast. Work on the thickest part first. Keep a nice percussive motion. And keep working it till it's thin and a nice even thickness. I think I'm satisfied with that. Peel off the top layer here. Now, it's time to add the filling. So I have just the very tops of some broccoli florets here. And I'm gonna stick them right here. I'm gonna angle them towards the thicker side. Cooking is so much fun. There's so many different ways to play with your food. Pounding out the chicken breast is really just exciting. And it makes for a lovely texture. So now that I've got the broccoli in there, I'm gonna go ahead and add a nice little pile of gooey, ooey mozzarella cheese. It's gonna melt all the way through that and just be amazing. And then, I'm gonna carefully roll this guy up in on itself here, squeezing as I go. All right. Fantastic. All right, that part's good. Work with the other one now. Squeezing as I go, kind of folding it in. Excellent. Now the last part is a little bit of seasoning, a little love for the chicken. I'm going to sprinkle these guys with paprika for contrast in flavor and contrast in color. Paprika has a beautiful burnt orange color to it. And then a little bit of garlic. I'm going to sprinkle that over the top here. And this is where it gets fun. A little olive oil. It's going to drizzle it over the chicken. A little old-fashioned salt and pepper. And then very gently, kind of roll it into the olive oil and all the seasonings that you just put down on there. Being careful to hold it together. Just kind of rock it back and forth and coat it. Once you have a nice little coating on there, go ahead and add it to your pan. Excellent. A little gentle rocking motion here to coat it in flavor. This guy's ready to go in the oven. First, I'm going to go wash my hands. All right, now it's officially ready to go in the oven. Rolled up chicken breasts like that are probably going to take about 25 minutes or so to get going, which gives us just enough time to get the risotto started. So I like to start with a nice hot pan, and I like to treat the risotto like a pilaf at first. It's a little olive oil in the pan. I have a half cup of risotto here, which is also called arborio rice. I'm just going to give it a couple seconds in the olive oil to saute and let the olive oil coat each individual grain. Looks like a good time right now. So the trick with risotto is to slowly add the liquid in. A little tiny bit at a time. And then you want to stir that until all the liquid is absorbed. Reduce your heat so that you're working on a medium-low temperature. It's okay if it cooks fast at first, that'll just help it get started. As the liquid absorbs, add more. I'm adding chicken stock to this right now, which is going to really help to bring out the full flavor of the risotto. I'm going to want to add the pesto early on, so once my little second batch of liquid has been absorbed into the rice, that's when I'll add the pesto. So the liquid's starting to absorb really well here, so now I'm going to add a couple big hearty scoops of the pesto. Flavor! Now the trick with risotto is to keep stirring it and keep it moving. The stirring motion helps to ensure a nice creamy texture. It's vitally important to the quality of a risotto dish. So the risotto is coming along very nicely, and it's about halfway there or so. At this point, I'm going to add a nice generous amount of salt, because again, we're working from scratch here, so we have to add all of our own salt. And I'm going to give it a little bit more stock here. I'm going to stir that in and then leave it alone for a second. I'm going to get the carrots going. Good. So get a nice hot pan here. Little olive oil in the pan. Get it all warmed up. Drop the carrots in. A little toss. I'm going to season these carrots up with a little lemon dill herb mixture. And of course, a little salt and pepper to round it out. Toss here, just to make sure they're all coated and loved up. All right, while it's nice and hot, I'm going to drop about an ounce of red wine in there. Quickly put a lid on it and reduce the heat. And what I'm doing is basically a quick braise. It's going to soften up the carrots very nicely. Meanwhile, back in risotto land over here, I'm going to keep stirring. Really is the stirring motion that keeps the risotto creamy. I've been stirring the risotto for a while now. Man, that's good. Each grain of rice is now totally cooked and there's a nice creamy consistency. I'm going to add a little bit of milk to it just to enhance that creaminess. And I pronounce the risotto done. Now let's check on the carrots. Excellent. Most of the wine is cooked out. They've taken on a pretty dark color. They're nice and soft, but not overdone. And now it's time to go get the chicken out of the oven. Everything smells so good. Wow. Those look magnificent. And now, I'm going to go ahead and plate this up. A couple nice scoops of risotto right in the middle of the plate. This will act as the background. And then the chicken right on top of the risotto. Very pretty. Then the carrots to fill it in. These babies are ready to go on the table. Well, I think your sweetie will be quite impressed with the magnificent feast you just prepared for them. Pair this up with a nice, crisp white wine. I suggest the Sauvignon Blanc. Till next time, apron.
It's dinner time.
Love you too.
Yay!
Thank you.
This looks good.
Made you dinner.
Wow. This looks delicious. Let's see.
Thanks for the little serenade.
Yay! Got all this trouble for dinner. At least I could do.
Yay.
Wow, this looks delicious. Cow. This is so perfect. This is such a hot kitchen.
So thanks for joining me in my hot kitchen tonight. Have fun turning up the heat in your kitchen, and I'll see you next week. Night night.
Oh baby, you're too pure. You're too pure for this wicked world. Your data's uncorrupted, but does something skip inside you? That's what takes up time in your life. Add the sum of the slides, and sooner or later love comes inside you, gets behind you, takes you under its wing. Is it some kind of function, a reconstruction of where you've always...
Pet the kitties.